Hey guys, this is Tombox, and today we're doing a ruling video, except it's gonna be different. We're not doing a ruling quiz because it would just be unfair to you guys as I get to pick the answers. That's right, today's ruling video are all about questions that you should ask your head judges before you dive headfirst into an event. From time to time, there are going to be rulings that don't match up with old precedents, or they just don't make common sense in general, and you always ask your head judge, but a lot of people get the references of what was ruled in the previous event, which is, a good start, but just remember, that's not the end-all be-all of all of these rulings, because whenever a ruling is given at an event, all the judges preface it with, for this event, it is ruled a certain way because things can change. It's not always the correct precedence, and I'm pretty sure you guys may have already experienced this in the past at large-scale tournaments. So for today's video, we're going to cover a few modern format rulings that you should definitely ask your head judge because they could be ruled either way, and hopefully you guys can use this to adapt your strategy and avoid getting random PE minors just because you assumed how a card would have been ruled, alright? And don't forget to hit that like button, hit subscribe if I helped you out in that way. Anyways, let's go. So the first question you should be asking at any modern event should be, does Tearlament Roll Kalos negate the effect of IP Masquerena? And it's going to have a pretty large ripple effect depending on how they answer. Well, it seems pretty straightforward, right? Like, for the context, Tearlament's Roll Kalos states that when your opponent activates a card or effect that includes an effect that special summons a monster, you can negate the activation, and if you do, destroy it, then perform the rest of the effect. And IP Masquerena has some level of special summoning, right? Immediately after this effect resolves, Link summon one Link monster using the materials you control, including this card. So, seems like a no-brainer, but is it though? So how did it get so complicated? Immediately after this effect resolves, Link summon one Link monster using the materials you control, including this card. Now, that is the reason why it got complicated, because, well, does IP Masquerena's effect include a special summon, or is IP Masquerena's effect pushing forward an action that the player must perform? If it's an action the player must perform, then it's not really pushing forward a special summon effect, rather it's just making it do something. Like, immediately after this effect resolves, tribute summon something. Are they forced to do an action, or are they getting an additional tribute summon? Yeah, technically they are getting an additional tribute summon. So there's like a lot that you can definitely argue for this, but at YCS Minneapolis, at YCS Pasadena, and even at our recent local regionals where I had to make a call on this, I believe for those events only, the IP Masquerena's effect cannot be negated by Tearlament's Roll Kalos. And yeah, it's for those events only. I'm gonna phrase it very specifically to that because what if it's different in the future? And that's why this is one of those rulings that you definitely have to ask a head judge. Likely this is only going to apply to maybe some of the tier players, but like definitely the sprite players that are trying to go into Avermax. That's a pretty important one, because if they can go into Avermax, it puts a pretty hard time for the tier player, but if you can negate it, that means they get an easier out against it. So you have to readapt your strategy so you don't make the wrong call trying to negate something that cannot be negated, versus, or maybe you're able to negate something that for that event you're actually allowed to negate. So this is something I have to be very careful of, especially when you have past rulings where Formula Synchron can be negated by Solemn Warning, which has a very similar wording to Roll Kalos. But don't forget, at the time back then, Formula Synchron before its errata did not state immediately after this effect resolves. That's why there's that complication there, and I believe you cannot even use Thunder King Ryo against that summon. So that's a pretty big one that you have to consider in terms of like differences of the times, and now that we have immediately after this effect resolves included in there, and if say the judges rule that, hey, you cannot negate it, therefore this will also apply to like Formula Synchron. Right? Hopefully that doesn't overcomplicate things, but that's what we're going with now. So that's like rule number one that you have to ask. The second question that you guys definitely have to ask a head judge for the event is related to Guardian Chimera. I'm sure you guys have heard of this during the branded season, but Guardian Chimera being flipped face down during the resolution. Does the Guardian Chimera still get the ability to draw and pop? So if this card is fusion summoned by a spell or effect, you can draw cards equal to the number of cards used from the hand, and if you do, destroy cards your opponent controls equal to the number of cards used as material from the field. And of course, Book of Moon, you just target a monster and flip it face down. As long as there's no poly, you're still good to go. But this is mainly a question of, does Guardian Chimera still remember the material? This particular one, Distant Coder also covered it about how there's no real answer, because this is one of those rulings that kind of goes against past precedents about monsters being flipped face down and all of its implications. So if Guardian Chimera actually forgets its material, and Guardian Chimera isn't a monster that targets, it doesn't have any targeting clause, everything happens during resolution. So from the drawing to the popping, all of that is in resolution. And so if Guardian Chimera forgets its material, then during resolution, it should not be able to draw, as it fails to remember the number of materials that and where they came from. So that's one way of how it was ruled in the past and different events. And the other way was also ruled as well, because there's an odd precedence where during the activation, the effect has already confirmed the number of materials within its own trigger, so it knows how many are from hand, and therefore it knows how many you can pop. Because really, it only cares about whether or not you're able to draw, because the drawing will lead to the popping. As long as it can draw, it can pop. And so for this one, it kind of makes sense as well, because Inferno Tierra also had something similar, because Tierra also has a material based clause. Depending on how many materials it was used, it will gain additional effects, and based on that, there was a question posed about what happens if it gets Book of Moon. And for that one, that ruling states that even if it gets flipped face down, you will continue the effect and just play it out as if it doesn't know the number of material. So you'll basically be able to hit all those effects regardless. So this is kind of the contradiction between, forgetting the material and stuff being flipped face down. And so that's why this is one of those that you definitely should ask a head judge, especially if you're playing branded, and if you're using branded in red and your guy gets flipped face down. It's the difference between getting massive pluses and popping versus just summoning out a beat stick. Before I continue, I want to give a shout out to MST.TV, because that is our merch site. If you guys want to help support this channel, get some awesome sleeves, oversleeves, mats, dividers to help sort your collection, go to MST.TV, because you'll find most of your essential needs for your card collecting right there. And we've got some of the best white sleeves on the market. Don't take it from me, take it from a lot of the other guys, a lot of the pros that you guys know and love. They love our stuff, and they're willing to vouch for it, and that's all I want to say. So check out mstmerch.com. Thank you for checking it out. Let's get into the third question. The third question you should be asking your head judge in this current format should be, do I need to declare that I am skipping the battle phase if I'm playing runic cards? This one is really important, because depending on who answers it is really different. If you have a judge that's extra strict, then they're going to be like, yeah, you have to declare it, and that is technically very proper. But of course, at YCS Niagara and even at our recent Vancouver regionals, it was ruled as the battle phase is considered skipped automatically. And you might be wondering, why do they do that? Why don't they do it the more proper way? Well, it really depends. Like, for my personal reason why I chose to I'm gonna assume that it is skipped, is because it minimizes a lot of potential issues. People might not be wording things properly. People might have abbreviated the ways that they played, maybe be taking shortcuts, and because they're taking shortcuts and that's not communicated properly, you're gonna have to go through a lot of unnecessary investigations, and that's just gonna prolong time and waste everyone else's time overall. Whereas, if you look at the end result, okay, where if you go from main phase to end phase, you're ending your turn, that's the same result as skipping your battle phase, because when you skip a battle phase, you'd say that if you want to do it properly, this is the proper way of saying it. If you want to be completely clear, I'm going to main phase and I'm going to attempt to go into battle phase, but due to the effect of my runic cards I previously played, it is not being skipped, so it is going to straight to end phase. If you say it like that, boom, no problem. I don't think anyone's going to question you whether or not you skipped your battle phase. But because you don't actually enter main phase 2, so the end result is more or less the same. So you're going from main phase to end phase regardless. And I'll tell you a funny story. One of the players that were playing Drytron skipped someone's entire turn by playing Thunder Ruler by going into Griffin and setting that card onto the field. And he also went to Amor Factor, and therefore he skipped his main phase and his battle phase. So remember, went from draw phase, standby phase, straight to end phase, and that was it. That was a very hilarious turn to witness, because someone basically got OT kit right away after. So yeah, someone literally got time walked all over his face. But in this case, if you're at a local level and there's no judges, then you 100% should declare that you're skipping your battle phase. Otherwise, the other guys won't accept it because that is not the proper way, and there's no higher authority figure that adjusted it to make it a bit easier to minimize these kinds of he said she said issues. Like, what if someone said, I go into my main phase and yeah, I'm just gonna skip to the end phase. Did he skip his battle phase? He said the word skip, but he didn't mention battle phase. So now it gets a little bit more messy. And the guy's like, I said I skipped to the end phase. Like, it's like just a big mess at the end of the day. You're gonna have long time extensions, long investigations, very unnecessary. And ultimately, we're here to play Yu-Gi-Oh! To have fun and not to deal with like the logistics of, you know, something that would have the same end result, basically. So that's kind of the logic if you guys want to break it down. So that's why you should ask your head judge whether or not you need to declare that you are skipping the battle phase when you are playing runic cards. All right, surprise pop quiz. I got one question for this, and if you guys get this right, well, congratulations. But I was a bit surprised because at my own regionals, a lot of people thought I was crazy for saying this. But pop quiz: if both yugioh and Kelbeck met their activation condition, their trigger condition in the hand, how does the new chain build? You guys have 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. And the correct answer is only one of them get to activate. You can't activate both because anything that summons from the hand via a trigger, you can only activate one of them. That's right, you can only activate one of them. It's the logic of Gores. When you take damage with Gores, you have 2 Gores, you can't activate both. If you have Gores and Tragodia, you can only summon one or the other and not both. And that's just something that's been in the game for forever. So yeah, I don't know why people really question that, but that's how it is. So that's why you can't go Kelbeck and yugioh to kind of create a weird chain block. It doesn't work that way. Anyways, that's the question here. That's the video for today. If you guys enjoyed this video, learned a thing or two about things that you should be asking, well, hit that thumbs up button. I'm sorry, judges, in the future, people are always going to ask you these questions, but it's a necessity. It's just for clarity of how they're going to adapt their game so that they don't get penalized, and I guess they get to play properly for that event. You know, I've been saying that like all day. That could have been a drinking game for you guys. But if you guys enjoyed this video, smash the thumbs up button, hit subscribe, ding that notification bell, and we're going to break down how to beat Tearlaments next time. Yes, I have a whole sheet ready for you guys, and I'm just going to share it with you guys. It's going to be quite fun. All right, until then, I'll see you guys in the next one.